Hello, my friends. Today I'm going to focus on application of ideas. What do we do when we have a client? How do we prepare? How do we take notes? And in this video, I'm going to focus on forecasting. The reason I'm focusing on forecasting is because over the past few months, especially over the past month or two, I've been making modifications to exactly how I do it, exactly what I bring up, what I'm looking at, how I prepare for the prediction part of a consultation. And I really like this. It's coming together very nicely. I like it much better than I was doing before. So I want to share it with you. And different vibrational astrologers are going to bring up, slightly different things, look at them in different ways. So just seeing the latest ways that people operate and function gives you some ideas of what you might want to do. And again, this is a little different from what I've done before. There's some similarities, but I want to show you exactly what I'm doing now. By the way, hopefully I'm not getting a lot of echo, and you might see this strange dark background behind me. I've just moved into a new house, don't have a lot of furniture. I put up some things around the room to break the echo. It looks black behind me. Anyway, if you're curious about why the background looks different. Okay. All right. Let's get some little bit of background and then we'll dive into specifically what I do. Of course, there are many ways to forecast. Transit, secondary progressions, primary directions, solar arc directions, solar and lunar returns. And then there are also the dashas in Vedic astrology, which are similar to Time Lord systems in Hellenistic astrology. And there are endless variations on how each of these techniques is used, of course, to see future trends. And there are other ones. Astrology sometimes gets overwhelming with all of these different things. So first thing I'm going to talk about is exactly what methods do I use and why do I use them. So in vibrational astrology, we have an evidence-based practice. Evidence-based practice means we have criteria for what we use. So instead of each astrologer having their own individual way of figuring out what to work, there's a fairly standardized way of determining what works. This is what's done in modern psychology and medicine and other fields. So number one, is the technique confirmed using modern research methods? If it is, totally awesome. That's probably going to work. Number two, we need to confirm it with consultation. So if you go through a database, you find something and it seems to work, but then it doesn't work with clients, you have trouble. This is stated very clearly in the requirements for the American Psychological Association and other organizations, that this is how they determine what they can use. And number three, if something is expected to work according to theory, if you have a good theory that's explaining a lot of things and that theory implies something, that suggests that the idea might work. So using those criteria, the forecasting method that has the most support, it has support from modern, controlled research studies using modern research methods, it works with our clients, theoretically it makes sense, is good old transit-to-natal aspects. We've done research on gold prices, watching gold prices go up and down, accidents, making graphs on when people get into accidents, timing of mental illness episodes. We make these graphs and they're working. So all of these research studies give correlations, the transits are lining up with the events better than random, and they use modern research methods in that there's no, especially with the gold price research, for example, there's no cherry picking of data. It's like whatever the prices are. It's a big deal for getting clear. Okay, so transit to natal, over and over again, our research shows that it works. So one interesting thing about the gold price research is we ran out of data. We had like 50 years of data or something, and now you have to wait 10 years to get 10 more years of data. So anyway, we couldn't test the model as thoroughly as we would like, but it was tested with new data. Anyway, transit to natal, strong evidence that it works. That's the bottom line. That's why we use it. Now, secondary progressions, remember the three criteria? Have we done controlled research studies that show that secondary progressions work? Not really, no, nothing really solid there. Does it work with clients? Yes, it works wonderfully, but everybody thinks their techniques work with clients. It would be nice if we had the support from controlled research studies as well. But in addition to working with clients, we do have support from theory. And this theory is explained in numerous videos that I have, on the members only index thing. You'll see towards the bottom theory and also a section on forecasting with progressions. And I explain this theory in many videos in detail. Just to summarize quickly, and this will sound very abstract and crazy when I summarize it briefly, but if you get into the whole thing, it really makes sense, is that there's something called spin. It's more properly called angular momentum. It's a fundamental part of the universe. It's fundamental to how subatomic particles work and even larger things like the Earth. And scientists say that the Earth has two kinds of spin: the rotation on its axis, which is making night and day, and the revolution around the sun is a distribution of angular momentum in two ways. So there's this concept of angular momentum, and that it got distributed into rotation and revolution. Now that might sound like really abstract and weird, number one. Number two, it might just sound like some kind of intuitive philosophy, but it's actually what modern astrophysicists say is going on. Now, if angular momentum is getting distributed through rotation and revolution, then we could hypothesize that there's a relationship between them. It's not a big jump since they're understood to be closely connected. And in astrology, we have this idea of like a fractal universe, things resonating at different levels. So if we guess that those two forms of angular momentum are resonating, we have the magic formula that astrologers have been claiming. Day equals a year. Why does a day equal a year? Because of resonance at the different fractal levels of angular momentum. Oh, well, that sounded very fancy, but I think you get the idea. Bottom line is this: you don't need to digest everything I just said. That's not important here for this video on forecasting, and I do explain in detail in other videos. The point is that we do have theory behind it. So out of the three things, the most important database, evidence from database, no, we don't have those most important ones, but we do have the other two. We have our work with clients, and so many astrologers use secondary progressions, also known as day for year progressions, and we have theory to support it. So that gives us, some level of confidence that secondary progressions work. Also, solar arc directions, and I explained this in a video in more detail on solar arc directions, are actually a way of seeing resonances in the secondary progress chart. That's why solar arc works. Let me say that again. It's showing resonances. It's a way of seeing the fundamental, most important arc. Why that solar arc is so important, I explain in other videos. But the bottom line is that solar arc directions can be understood as a technique to see resonances in the secondary progress chart, which fits beautifully with vibrational astrology, which is all about resonance and frequency. So from our point of view in vibrational astrology, solar arc directions would almost have to work, especially conjunctions, when that arc just lines up, bam, right on something. So those are some of the techniques that we rely on primarily. We need to do more research on solar arc direction, on solar returns and dashas and Ferdaria and perfections and all this stuff. We just need to do the research, confirm it. We don't have to have a theory for why it works. So that just hasn't been done yet. Okay, let me get to the next slide. So here I say this on this slide, that these other techniques, solar returns, according to theory, they should also work. Because according to VA theory, when two planets are exactly conjunct, like when the transiting sun comes back around your birthday, aligns exact, like right to a second of time, bam, a perfect alignment. That alignment, as we understand it, vibrational astrology, continues to all vibrations. Like you can go to the 8, 16, 32, 64, 200s, 500s, thousands, and it's still aligned. So when the orbs are small, and if they become exact, our theory is telling us, oh my God, this is going like right to the core of you, man. It's just like, just saturating your energy field from the cellular level all the way out. So theoretically, solar returns should be important. So why am I not going to show you solar returns as a predictive method? The reason is, I'm going to read the sentence from the slide. In vibrational astrology, we have not yet figured out, or at least I haven't, maybe some of the other vibrational astrologers are getting more comfortable incorporating this, haven't yet figured out a clear and simple way to integrate information from the solar return into the forecast. So sometimes we haven't started using a technique because if we don't have a clear and direct way to know how to incorporate it, it's like information overload. And then you've got so many different techniques, you can explain anything. So we need to have situations where our forecasting is not working, something happened, we're not predicting it, the solar return comes in, helps. We just need a way to be clear about how to use it. So solar returns almost certainly work. And this is how an evidence-based practice works. We're just at a certain stage of understanding and things develop and evolve. Now you might be curious about tertiary and minor progressions. They may work, they may not work. They're not directly implied, at least I don't see right now how the fact that secondary progressions directly implies that tertiary and minor would work according to our theory. Because this spin, also known as angular momentum, that's making secondary progressions and solar arc directions work, is not involved in the lunar cycle. So they may work, they may not work. I haven't researched them thoroughly. I don't know that anybody else has put the tertiary minor progressions through a very, very detailed, thorough, exhaustive kind of modern research study that we do in vibrational astrology, where we spend typically hundreds and hundreds of hours working through something to see how it works. Okay. And so we have also, as I mentioned, all these other systems, which we don't have a theory now for understanding. We don't have good studies to support them. But note this. I want to make a note of this. This last paragraph, this bottom paragraph. Note that many astrologers find overwhelming evidence for particular methods. I mean, there are astrologers Vedic astrologers use dashas, Hellenistic astrologers and medieval astrologers using perfections for Daria, getting fantastic results. That's exciting. That's very exciting. And we want to build on that. We're not skeptical of it. We want to use it. We just need to see case studies going through a person's entire life where you're not cherry picking events. You're not even cherry picking the individuals. Like maybe all people that you have a good biography for in a certain political area or something. Some kind of consistent way to present that would get us going with being able to use these things. Okay, just explaining the groundwork for why we do what we do. Okay, taken maybe too long. I apologize for that, almost 15 minutes. Let's get into it, man. That was, maybe I spent too much time on that, but it is important. Okay. You're going to notice that as I show you these charts, when we show you the series program, that this chart wheel, we're going to do two people, person one, person two. These are real people. I changed their names. And I got rid of the birth information because I want to keep this anonymous. So how did I do that? If you're teaching, giving a class, and you want to do a similar thing, just as an aside to this video here, it's very simple. Here's what I did. I right click, I go to customize, and then page designer, because page designer is where you can do everything, do all kinds of customizing. Then you right click on any of the birth information sections. There's a big red and yellow thing telling you to right click, and then you just check what you want. I unchecked birth date, birth time, birthplace, latitude, longitude, DST, time zone. I just unchecked them. You see, they're not checked. They were originally, they're checked. And when I want to put this wheel back to its original form, I just check them. How cool is that? So it's very easy to make a chart wheel where you're not showing any of the birth information. And then you don't have to put it into your program and erase it and whatever. It's just not there. Very, very simple. That page designer is so awesome because you can control just about everything. All right. Finally, at last, how do we do the forecasting? Let me go back to my slides. Here they are, the 4 steps. Step number 1, run the timeline forecast. So timeline forecast is our go-to technique to analyze these things. So let's do it. Let's see what it looks like. I've got person 1 here, and I go to forecast, and I select timeline format. Well, you might notice something interesting here. It has already selected transit to natal, day for year, progress to natal, day for year, progress to progress. So when we do progressions, we look at progress to natal. We also look at progress to progressed. Just from our personal experience, which again is not the greatest thing. It would be great if we had controlled research studies to show it, but we also have theory to support it. From our experience and other astrologers who are not VA astrologers, progress to progress works. So you want progress to natal, you want progress to progressed. What's the difference? Progress to progressed is, you might say, your evolving self. It's what you're growing into. And the progress to natal is how your core, essential, fundamental nature is getting expressed through the current trends. It's a meeting, like a marriage of your fundamental purpose in life and how you have developed, how you go back to your roots to implement that, integrate that in to what you've become now. So there are certain things that you were born to do, that you were made for. And then as we grow older, we change. We develop new tastes, new interests, new hobbies, we change. Hopefully we change, okay? And so progress to natal is really powerful. Like, whoa, because it's pulling it all together. So when I see progress to natal, I really want that to work for the client because I really want to see their purpose in life meet how they've changed and bring it all together. Progress to progressed is exactly what it sounds like. It's your new evolving way. So what do I mean by new evolving way? A lot of astrologers use the progressed sun sign, moon sign. Yet you do evolve and develop in those ways. And it shows you how that's functioning. So some of these things might be a little bit subtle. We're always in a process of learning, always in a process of understanding, using theory, using observations. This is at least my current way of understanding it. Then, look at this, we do transit to progressed. So the transits are showing you what you're getting impacted by in the world. But you know, an interesting thing about transits, they're not just out there, like, floating out like, bam, I got hit with this, I got hit with that. They're also things that get inside you. That's the observation. Like when, I think every modern astrologer knows this, when Uranus transits your 7th house cusp, excuse me, upsets in relationships, they happen. Uranus is on the midheaven, sudden career change. Did that career change just hit you from the outside? Actually not. I mean, you see the people are motivated. They're engaged with it. So all of these forecasting methods are not strictly just things hitting you from the outside. With the progressions, it's much more an emphasis on you, just what's important to you. And the secondary progression, because of this resonance between the day and year, has a very profound, essential, you might even say like spiritual, like very essential quality to it. It's really important to be tuning in to how you are changing from the inside. And transits, they are things that are important to you in relationship to what's going on in the world. You see the interface with the world more. Okay, I hope that makes some sense. Actually, all these things are somewhat a little bit subtle when you're consulting the person, because they're all going to affect them. So we have transit to progressions, and we have the solar arc. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 techniques that we use. Now, how did they all get automatically selected? I didn't have to check them. And also the details are already selected. When I click on transit-to-natal, just highlight it, it's Jupiter through Pluto. When I click on day for a year, it's showing regular planets. So there's 2 selections, what planets and what aspects. They're all set already. So all I have to do is select it and click OK. Super fast. What, is the computer a mind reader? No, it's not a mind reader. What you do, you probably figured this out, you set it as a default. So what you do is the first time you go in, you select the 5 things you want. And for each one, for transit-to-natal, you're going to do Jupiter through Pluto. Because we only want to look at the outer planet transits. They're the most important. But for progressions, and by the way, before I go on to the next thing, with midpoints, composite midpoint, same angle. That's a lot of the resonating stuff. Very important for vibrational astrology. For progress-to-natal, we use all the planets, regular planets, same selection with midpoints, etc. For progressed, regular planets, but these other options are not there because it's not 2 charts. When you have 2 charts, transit-to-natal or progress-to-natal, there's all kinds of things that can happen, like a composite. You can only have a composite if you have 2 charts. Progress is just 1 chart, so there's fewer things that can occur. So we have regular planets with midpoints, and then transit to progress, same deal. Outer planets, because it's a transit, same selections that we have for transit-to-natal, and then solar arc, same deal. Excuse me. So you make those selections there. You can stop this video, replay it again, see what those selections are, select them, and here's the magic thing. The Sirius software has zillions of features, and there's like little buttons here and little buttons there that do all kinds of cool things. And so it's very easy to overlook them. And I mean, the good news is you can do all this stuff. The bad news is you very easily might not notice it. Right there, save current selections as new default. You click that, you just click it. I'll click it again, it won't hurt anything. Oh, it's good thing I did click it. And when you, because I forgot to tell you about this, when you click it, it asks you, is this going to be your initial default or a quick select? I haven't used this quick select, honestly, in probably decades, so I don't want to go into that. I don't use it. I can show that in another video if you want to know, but it gives you a way to have other defaults, so I just leave it on initial. That means you select that, you click OK, and now changes are saved. That means the next time you come into forecast, it's going to have those settings. Oh my God, this makes life easy, because it just means you select timeline in the future, you click OK, there you are. You've got what you want. So you want to work fast with your clients. You don't want to be having to click around and reselect things. Makes a big difference. Okay. So you do that, you click OK, and then you will get the listing. I don't want the person's name to pop up, which will happen if I click OK. So, I want to keep this anonymous. So what I have here, going back to the PowerPoint, is you're going to see this listing like that. You know what I can do? I can run it for myself. Let me run it for myself. I should have thought of that before. I'm going to go into the data entry screen, pull in my name, and this will show you the whole process. Click on forecast, click on timeline, everything's already selected, just click OK. Now, one other thing I do, I leave the date, which will be the current month. I'm making this on August, what is today, the 7th, so it always starts on the 1st of the month. So it knows the current month. Leave that. That's the way I do it. And I do it for the current month for 1 year. That's what I do when I see clients. I want to get a perspective on the coming year. It just feels better to me. Like if I only know this month and I don't know what's happening a few months from now, I don't feel quite comfortable, because I might start telling the client something and maybe a month and a half from now some big thing is happening. On the other hand, if it's out 3 or 4 years, you have to have some kind of granularity, people sometimes call it, of what seems reasonable. For me, to have a perspective on the coming year is good. That's far enough into the future to cover the immediate things going on. Once you're out over a year, a lot of it's going to depend on what you've done with your life, because everything depends on us as well. Astrology is not some miracle thing. It's forces that, a miracle thing like as above, like some crystal ball. You just look at it and you just know everything. It's forces. Depends on where your mind and heart and everything are and how you respond to things. And that, a lot of that is not just in the chart. So I like to see out a year in advance. So I click OK. Yeah, see, it shows the name up there. I didn't want to run it for the actual clients. And so there it is. By the way, I could zoom this in. For some reason, it's a little bit small. Once you set this up, sometimes when you resize the screen, which I did, I resized it to fit it in this recording area. So that's something to know about also. You have this magnifying lens. I'll do it one more time. Now this is filling most of my available area. So it's good to know about. You can resize things. The plus, of course, zooms. The minus thing, of course, makes it smaller. So there it is. There is the information right there. There's the transit-to-natal. And I like them separate. The Sirius software makes them separate because they work differently. If you mix the progressions and transits all together, they work differently. It's like mixing apples and oranges. To me, it's confusing. Now, everybody's different. You might want that. So here's a progressed to natal, things that are going on for me. And then progressed to progressed. The progressions are slower, heavy, very intense, and then the transit to progressed, and then the solar arc to natal. Now with solar arc to natal, it shows the squares and other aspects, trines, because the way the software is set up, it uses the same settings for solar arc and for secondary. But when I do the solar arc, I'm not that interested in the aspects, the squares and so on, because in solar arc, it's mainly direct alignments. It's showing resonances in the secondary progressed chart. So I will ignore some of these squares and other things when I'm going through the solar arc. Now, I'm at a half hour. This is a good point for me to take a break and continue this in part 2. There it is. What does it mean? How do we deal with it? And what I'm going to show you in part 2 is how I look at this thing, what I do with it, how I make the notes that I'm going to refer to when I see the client. Because here's the problem I've run into, and I assume other people do as well. If I start analyzing this before I see the client, I'm not going to remember what I'm thinking. How do I take notes? How do I make it simple that I can refer to it and not have to just read a bunch of detailed, crazy notes? I'm going to show you that. I think it's really cool. So that's what we'll do in part 2. I'm going to pick up with this slide, show you how I take this thing, interpret it, make my notes so that when I see the client, it's really easy to refer to, refresh my mind about it, and talk to the client. Actually, this may end up being even 3 videos, because then I'm going to talk later about what happens when they want to zoom into a time period and how I do that. So there's actually a lot of information here. Okay, I'm going to stop here and continue with part 2 from here. Thank you very much, my friends. Thank you for being a member. God bless. Namaste.